Hello and welcome to another vlog in our Parables of Jesus series. In today's vlog, we're going to be looking at the parable of the wedding feast. Now, this is a parable that can be found in both Matthew's Gospel and Luke's Gospel, but between the two Gospels, there's different details that are shared and included. So for the sake of this vlog, we're going to be focusing more on the parable that Jesus tells in Matthew, and it's found in chapter 2. So I'm just going to read it for us now. It says this: Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepares a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servant to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. Then he sent some more servants and said, 'Tell those who have been invited that I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fattened cattle have been butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they paid no attention and went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest seized his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to the servants, 'The wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. So go to street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find.' So the servants went out into the street and gathered all the people they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was soon filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man who was not wearing wedding clothes. He asked, 'How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friend?' The man was speechless. Then the king told the attendants to tie him hand and foot, throw him outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen." So what do we learn from this parable? Well, through this parable, we get an insight into what the kingdom of God is like. We're told in these verses that the kingdom of God is like a banquet, but it's no ordinary banquet. Not that a banquet's ordinary to start with, but it's no ordinary banquet. This is a banquet for a king. And not only that, this is a banquet that a king has put on for his son. And on top of that, it's his son's wedding. So think that this banquet is going to be as grand and as extravagant as possible. There'd be singing and dancing and celebrations, and an invitation to this feast is something that everybody would want. This comparison to the kingdom of God therefore shows that it's something of abundance. It's not a fast, it's a feast. It's something that sustains us. It's something that provides everything. It feeds that spiritual hunger and quenches that spiritual thirst. And that is what the kingdom of God is. That's what the gospel is. So who would actually refuse an invite to a banquet like this? Well, within this parable, you could argue that there are 4 responses to an invitation to the kingdom of God, just like there were 4 responses to an invitation to the wedding. Firstly, we have those who refuse the wedding invite. We're told in the parable that those who were first invited just refused. We're told of how some just paid no attention, whilst others mistreated and killed the servants that came. These can be likened to the 2 responses people may have when they are invited to the kingdom of God, when they receive that invitation: that of indifference and that of hostility. We have those who hear that invite, but just who choose to ignore it. Just like those who we can tell or hear about the riches of the kingdom of, tell them about the riches of the kingdom of God, but they just choose to do nothing about it. And in so, through ignoring it, they reject that invitation. And then there's those who respond with hostility, who react with violence and anger, and in doing so, reject the invitation. But then we also hear of those who were invited next. We're told that the servants went out into the streets and they gathered all they could find. And I think there's a really important phrase that is used, the bad as well as the good. And we're told that the wedding hall was filled with guests. The invite was extended to all, the good and the bad. Anyone and everyone who was there was invited to the wedding. That invite was open to all. And today, that invite to the kingdom of God is still open for all. But the difference between the first lot of guests and the second had accepted the invitation. And that's all we have to do. We've been offered the invitation and we just have to accept it. So the three responses there, those who ignore, those who respond with hostility, and those who accept. But what about the fourth response? Well, Jesus continues to tell us in the parable of a guest who accepts the invitation but does not change his clothes and he's thrown out. Now, this isn't because the king was a fashion expert or he only wanted the best people in the most designer clothes at the wedding. It's the lack of effort made by the man, thinking that he didn't need to change. And that's the fourth response. Those who accept that initial invitation to the kingdom of God and say, yeah, I'm going to have a life with Christ, but do nothing to change, who don't change their ways, their lifestyles, their thinking, and instead think it's enough just to have said, yeah, no, I follow Jesus. An invitation to the kingdom of God does just take an initial yes. That's the blessing of it. We just have to say yes. But then what follows is a commitment to change. A commitment to change what is wrong, to follow what God commands, to put on our new wedding clothes, to show that we are a new creation. So I leave you with a question today. How are you RSVPing? Are you just ignoring the invite? Are you greeting it with hostility and ripping it up? Have you said, oh yeah, I'll come, but nothing's changed? Or are you willing to accept that invite and change? Because I don't know about you, but this feast is definitely one I want to be at.